of the Thunderbirds. My English or my Indian name? Okay, my English name is Max Glenn White Jr. But I asked my dad once how he got White, so he took me down. See, he's from down below. Now, when you hear people say down below, they mean Fort Peck, see. So if anybody tells you down below, you know where I mean. Anyway, he took me to a cemetery in Oswego, and then he walked me over to this, what do they call that now when it put on graves? Yeah, one of them ums. Well, anyway, on there it said, see, it said so it's a Well, anyway, he said, kid, he said, see that name right there? He pointed at it and had U.S. Army Scout, and it had White Buffalo. He said, that's where your great-grandpa's from. He said in the early 20s, when all the reservations were getting, anyway, enrollment would go and say, who's your mother's mother, your father's father, all this and that to enroll them, see. Anyway, back then, he said what they did was rather than give his dad, which is my grandpa's dad, rather than White, they cut it off because they didn't want to have him buffalo, see. So that's how he said you got your Indian name when they first did that. So now the white people came and gave you White because they didn't want you to have your Indian name, see. So through the years, I used to tell people I did a lot of family research for people in Washington, D.C. when I was on the school board. I was there, 3 times at the archives in Washington, D.C. and I look up different people who tell me, well, Max, can you do a family tree for me? I said, okay, I will. So I did. Cost me a quarter sheet to print out their information. I like this one we used to tell Wild Steel, that one that passed away. Anyway, I told him, did you ever know that your real name was Fire Steel, not Wild Steel, Fire Steel? Isn't it, Max? I said, yeah. He said, oh, I never knew that, but there's different other names like that. They changed through the years, and then there was a paper I was looking at, probably 16, and on top it had Ration Indians, and below that they had about 10, well, let's say about 10 names written in their language, like it was a Sinwoin language. They wrote it in their language, or Robot language, and then below they had it in English, like I just said, Fire Steel, or whatever their names. There's some other names out there that I knew people wouldn't want me to tell them what their original Indian name was, because they'd probably be ashamed, like Stiff Arm. Theirs was Stiff Arm, not Stiff Farm, like they spell it, I think. Well, anyway, I did a lot of that for them. And then, well, that was a little bit on my side, a little bit of some information that I know was my family. And then through the years, my mom was married to my dad, Max White Sr., from down below, like I said. And then she originated from what they call Dogtown. Back in the day, that was where the Indians went to school. They called it Dogtown. There used to be 2 or 3 buildings there, and some of the res Indians, I'll say, Indians from Agency, Hays, and they would go to school down there. See, there was no school back in the days, no Catholic schools, so that's where they went. And I asked my mom, I said, Mom, I said, where was you born? She said, I was born in Dogtown, Dogtown, they used to call it. Like my mom is Richard King Sr. He used to be on a council. And then, like she had siblings. There was Richard King, that was my mom's brother. Robert King, and my mom's brother, Leon King. And there was my mother, Serena Rock. And Margaret, the ironmaker, she passed away. And Alice Fleury was my mom's other sister. And Olive King was her sister, also her sister, and her sibling was Duke King. A lot of people didn't realize about how Duke King was actually, there's a story on that, because I asked Mom, I said, what was Duke King's nickname? She said, Buttons. I said, how come Buttons? They said, when they brought him to us, they used to make those, like they have buttons with 4 little holes, put strings in there. She said he was amazed at that, so my mom called him Buttons. Well, anyway, back to the story, Duke King, he, everybody called him Duke. Anyway, back in the day when Duke's real parents, which are Wallace Bear and his old lady, came to my grandpa Dick King, and they asked him to adopt Duke King as their own. They said, yeah, okay, so that's how Duke King, which was a bear in reality, and then my grandpa Dick King adopted him, so that's how he became a king, see. Like Chuck Bear and Dad Charlie Bear, that's Duke's King's brother, see. So that was that on the Duke King side. And then what else? My other aunt, which was Margaret Ironmaker, she was Margaret King. She married this ironmaker from Rocky Boy, and he was an ironmaker, like this Robert King, Bobby Ironmaker. That was his mother. So that was a little bit of my mom's history. And Alice Fleury married James Fleury, and then the other ones, like my aunt Olive King, she was never married. So that kind of comes. Bobby King, he married, like this center over here, it says Ramona King Center over there. She was a Works, so that's where she came from on his side. And then, like, a lot of people don't realize, they all say, if you ask them where the original Fort Belknap was, they don't realize it was in Chinook. When you go to Chinook, you go to that one road, it says the battlefield. You come around that turn, and you cross a bridge going to that battlefield. Right on the right side, that's where the second Fort Belknap used to be. From there, they moved to where they are presently now, down, where it's at now, down at the agency. And they had their own res, in other words. So that was on that side. What else can I talk about? Oh, a lot of people don't realize I used to do a lot of research on this reservation. Like, they used to have fire stations back in the day. Monument Peak, everybody knows. Mission Peak, they know that. And then that one on Three Buttes, there used to be a fire station there. They used to have people stay there in the fire season, in other words. But people don't realize that at Eagle Child, as a high point and then as a low point. That low point, there used to be a fire station there, but through the years, that kind of rotted away on that. So that's just a little bit I know about that. And then I used to ask people, I said, do you know what the original name of Three Buttes is? All they could tell me is that all they ever knew it by was Three Buttes. But through some of the research I did, it was called Medicine Buttes. That's the original name, is Medicine Buttes. A lot of people didn't know that, so I try to tell them. And then back in the day, when my folks finally moved out here, we moved in, where that community center is now down Quick Stop. There used to be a hill. When you go down there, there's a turn there. You'll see it look like a hill used to be there. Back then, I remember that it was straight, flat. How I remember it, my mom's and my dad stayed in a log cabin there. And I remember once, winter time, my dad, in other words, trying to tell me to go to bed or go to sleep. He said, "Hey kid," I said, "Yeah." He said, "Go hit the hay." So I looked at him, I didn't know what he was talking about. So I said, "Okay." I went outside, I was out there walking around looking for hay. So he said, "What'd you do?" I said, "You told me to hit the hay." He said, "No, I mean for you to go to bed." Made him laugh, and so I had to go to bed. And anyway, my mom moved here over 4th Street. There used to be a white building there, had downstairs and burned coal. And that's where my mom was staying. After, see, my mom was married to my dad, and she had 7 kids. I never knew that for quite a few years. Anyway, there's 4 siblings that were older than me, 1 set of twins, and the other were just, you know, a boy and a girl that were born before me, but they died. She never did tell me what they died from, but I never did know that. So that was on, you know, my white side of my family, siblings that I know. But my mom was married to Moses Stiffarm, and that's when my Stiffarms, like it'd be my Jeb Stiffarm was the first, you know, sibling with Stiffarms. Then there was Loretta Stiffarm. She later married Buzzy Holly, and then Alice Marie Stiffarm, which married Fred Hallcoulter. Everybody knew him. He lived to be 100 years old. He used to be a cop around here and stuff. And then there was, after them 3, there was the siblings that died, which was 4. Then I was born, and then there was my brother. Everybody knows him as Billy Whiskers, or Billy. And then William White, and then my sister Lorraine Doney, which married Ralph Doney. That's my other sister. And then that was on that white side. And then after my mom left my dad, she married George LaRock. He was a member of the Little Shop. Anyway, from there was born Georgianne LaRock, which passed away about 3 years ago, and she was married to, everybody knows him by Curtis Doney. He used to work for IHS. And then from there was Alwayne LaRock. Alwayne LaRock works for the high school, and he's still alive. He stays at Pine Grove. So that's most of the history on that. And then when I first came, when I was growing up, everything was no water, no electricity. Your chores were to go empty the slop bucket, because when we were small, it was too cold to go outside in the wintertime. So we went in the slop bucket next to the wood stove, because that's all you had was a wood stove for heat, and then they had old kerosene lamps, and then we had to haul water. Like I had a real good friend, that's still alive. His name's Andrew Work Sr. Me and him grew up together. We used to go look for each other and ride horses and play around, walk in the mountains. That one year we would go kill magpies, and pretty soon I think we almost killed them off because there's go look for the nest. Okay, but back here we got water from the creek, and when my mom and them stayed over at this white house, they had a hand pump. Everybody would get water from that hand pump. A lot of people don't realize there's one, two, 3. There's 3 areas along this creek back in the day. That's what I was getting to when I was telling you my Andy Works story. And anyway, there's 3 real ice cold creeks. Used to be. That first one I'd say is that Stephen Fox is up here at Fox's, where they stay. I used to stay. They dug a hole and they put rocks around it, and people came drink that water because it's real cold. Or some of them used to do, that other place they call down here, we used to call it Luke's Hole. Around this turn over here, right across there, that's what they had, another big place they dug, and they used to have an ice box in there. People would put like their milk and stuff in there to keep cold. And then this other place is right across this, by the post office. It's all a lot of water there now. There used to be a little house there on the left. Max Doney, they used to call him, had lived there, and he used to buy tires from kids. And then same thing, had real ice cold water there. They used to call it Max's hole, not mine, but his. That's where the three areas got a lot of cold water. And the other thing I did was, we used to go, like I said, me and Andy worked, senior used to go horseback, and we'd go to each other's house, chop all the wood, haul all the water, haul the wood in, chop it in, haul the water in, empty the slop buckets, and then me and Andy hated his mother used to wash on Wednesday. So we'd walk to Luke's Hole, we called it, we had a tub between us and 2 5-gallon buckets, and we'd haul it up for her to wash. We dreaded that, but she also made fry bread and beans for us that day. So after that, then we got to play. Where was I born? At the old IHS. I don't know if you guys remember, it used to be kind of northwest of when you go drive into that first turn, you see that Snake Butte rock statues or monuments there or something. You go straight down, there used to be IHS hospital right there. That's where I was born. I was born 9/6/1950. My parents was Max White Sr., and my mom's maiden name was Serena King. So, like I said, Serena White, Max White Sr. See, he was from Fort Peck, she was from here. And anything else you need to, I could talk about, I always tell people about this monument over here that they see. It used to be, if you notice, like there's a crossroads out here by the post office. You can see where it comes from Cree Village and goes across. So it used to come across here and come out. It used to be in the middle there, and too many cars ran into it. So they moved it to where you see it now. And I asked my mom, I said, Mom, who made that monument? She said, well, back in the day, this old lady, her name was Mrs. Kern, because Bill Kern used to own a store up there. She said, what we did is we sewed blankets together and then had bake sales. She said, that's where that monument come from. A lot of people don't realize that, see. And then back in the day, there used to be up where the powwow grounds is. You probably see that one place. You could see where it was dug. And anyway, there used to be a sawmill there. And back in the day, every spring, one of these ranchers would bring the beef, and that's where they had a big barbecue for anybody to go up there and eat. They don't do that anymore. And around this turn over here between that monument and that trailer, there's another place there you could see. Used to be a sawmill there. And the other sawmill used to be over here in Granville. I call that metal bridge a troll bridge. So anyway, in there's a depression. There used to be a sawmill there, and they had a big building there. In that building, the reason I'm talking about this, I asked this one elder, Eero, his nickname is Butch Eero, he stayed in Beaver Creek. I used to work for housing, I used to do different things on his house for him, and I asked him, "Where'd you get this house?" He said, "Oh, Max, I got it from Granville's." He said, "It used to be there by that sawmill." I said, "Oh, okay, so that's where that originated from." And then they call it Sawmill Road because they used to have a lot of their lumber and stuff in there, sawed up in here, so they sell it. John Captor Center, they used to have a grade school. I went there. If you ask anybody when John F. Kennedy got shot, if you ask him where was he when he got shot, and they could actually tell you where they was when they heard he got shot. I could always remember I think I was in the 6th grade. That teacher coming squealing, and that's when she told us that John F. Kennedy got shot. From there, after I finished 8th grade, see, back then they never gave you a diploma and say, okay, you finish 8th grade and they give you a diploma. So from there, I went to Flanger Indian School for 2 years on my freshman and sophomore year. And I was going to go back on my junior year. And my mom used to work at IHS as a cook. And then she broke her ankle before I had to go back in that fall to Flanger. So I stayed back and went to the mission school. What was really hard with me, I thought, is I didn't have no Catholic religion. And every morning they always prayed, and then this one Sister Giswalda would walk by and say, "Max, I can't hear you." And, it took me a while just to try to get what their prayers that they were saying. So from there I went to Flanger and finished in 19. A lot of people don't realize. They say, "Okay, when did you graduate?" Like say this year, 24, and they don't realize school starts in the fall, right? And ends the next year. So that's what a lot of people don't understand. Anyway, I graduated from Flanger in 1968, and then I went to Fort Belknap College in 89 to 90, and I got my associates there, and I looked at different programs that I wanted to go into, what I was good at. I always tell people, if you're going to go to another college, I said, your people you have, you're telling you what you need to do, this and that. I said, they don't tell you, you don't realize. I said, the reason I know is I said I used to be a tutor at Belknap College, and I did all from algebra, college algebra, stats. I said I did it at Fort Belknap. I said simply because a lot of these programs, they'll call them prerequisites. That means you have to have these before you could go into another class. See? So I did all them before I went to Salish. In 89 I went to Salish, and I was going to do special ed teacher and business management, but I couldn't keep up with my bills at home, so I never did get to finish, and ended up working for housing for 10 years, and driving for the mission for 10 years, driving for Hays School for 10 years. I worked for housing for 10 years, worked for transportation for, I think it was 2 years, 2.5 years. Very often or periodically, same thing, isn't it? Yeah. Well, anywho, my mom back in the day, we actually never really had a lot of spices like they do nowadays. Mm-hmm. How we grew up was mostly like, now I call it natural, like say boiling meat, it was just, just a little bit salt and pepper, that was it. So you'd cook boiling meat and, like chicken and all this and that for the holidays. I like this one story when my mom first got with little George, because he worked at the store. It refers to, you know, they call New Year's, they call it bullets and bangs. Anyway, he called my mom. He said, "Serena," Mom said, "What?" "I'm gonna bring some hamburger home. I want you to cook some bullets and bangs for New Year's." So I said, "Okay." So he brought it home, and my mom woke up next morning, and then she, what she did was she made a bunch of beans with her hamburger. And then she made fried bread. Little George said, "What is that?" She said, "I don't know, you know, they call it creeways, in other words." And she said, "Only bullets and bangs I know is beans and fried bread." And then anyway, back in the day we used to go to different areas, and a lot of people visited each other. A lot of your siblings, you went and visit them. I remember my mom wants to Seiko wants to visit her cousin, and would go to Rocky Boy to visit her grandma, or else we used to go there to pick June berries and, you know, stuff like that. And then a lot of, like little George, he did a lot of fishing, a lot of hunting, so we ate, you know, like fish and a lot of deer. And I used to go hunt antelope and prairie chickens and sage hens, bring them back and eat them. And then, like a lot of people don't realize, they used to ask, "Well, when did they ever make dry meat?" I said, "Well, you gotta stop and think." I said, back in the day, they didn't have everything like they do now, you know, like these, where you could either do them at your house or this and that. But back in the day, people from the agency would come to Hays and hunt, and they would dry them in the mountains, see. But they would come by wagon and buy muggies down there. They call that one reservoir Old Woman Reservoir, and they used to camp there, and then they'd make it to Hays. So that's where most of the dry meat came from. It never came from, you know, like a dehydrated or oven, or some of them would put it outside, or make a big old line in your house and hang it up like that. And then way back they used to, like I said, they never had any refrigerators, but most of the older people had on their north side of their house, right? They had boxes, like some of them had apple boxes or anything up there, and they put, like I said, dry meat or whatever they wanted to keep. That's where they kept it. And I remember I talked to this one lady, her name was Birdie Mae Shortman. She said, "Oh yeah, Junior." She said, a lot of them call me Junior. She said, "Yeah, we had old rawhide purses," she said, with stuffed leaves in there, and then keep them on, you know, on the outside. And that's how they kind of preserved their food. And then back in the day, over here at Forestry, there used to be a kind of a white house there now. It's an ice house, and they used to bring antelope, mostly antelope, sometimes deer that'd be frozen. And that was part of the rations they brought out to us, see. So people would come to over by Forestry, and they would give them a deer or antelope, whatever they wanted. How I remember that is, I had a picture of myself sitting on a frozen deer. I must have been about 4 or 5, and hanging on to it because I was scared, but my uncle was holding on to it. And then, well, later on they had started getting the rations, and then pretty soon it got to where, like it is now, rations here, in order for you to get rations, they go by guidelines. You can't make so much money as an individual. If you go over that, you're not allowed to get rations. So that one year I tried to get rations, but before that I tried to get food stamps. Back then they had those little coupons, they call them food stamps. Anyway, I tried to put in for them, but what they told me is you're over, I forgot what it was, 1,200 or 1,300. Anyway, you make too much, you can't get rations. Or, oh, they said you had food stamps. I said, I know. I said they was only going to give me $12 on food stamps. So I asked them, I said, oh, so, I said, Oli, I said, 1, 2, 3, 4. I said, oh, I could probably get 6 sacks of spuds and go fish in the creek or something and go hunt. Anyway, I declined them. So, like I said, I tried rations, and they said, no, you can't get rations because you declined food stamps. So other than that, more or less, I worked off and on, different schools, different areas. The reason I don't like working for schools is in the summertime, you didn't have no jobs, see. So I used to work for BLM. I worked for them during the fire season, so that's how I made it through, see. And anything else on food is, back in the day, me and Andy Works used to go rob a lot of gardens. I can only think of one person, 2 persons that used to speak Grovance. Down here, they used to call him Old Joe Blackcrow, right on the other side of John Capture Center. There used to be 1, 2, 3. Used to be 3 of those gray houses you see, and then 4. Anyway, he stayed on a corner, and his name was Joseph Blacko. That's Fiddles Joseph Blacko Jr. That was his dad, and his mother stayed there. And I used to walk by and visit him a while and say, "Hello, Joe." He said, "Hello, kid." Anyway, he'd be talking. I said, "Who are you talking to?" He said, "I don't want to lose my language." He said, "Nobody to talk to." So eventually, my concept on that was they didn't more or less didn't want to teach their siblings, in other words, the language. The reason I said that, because that one year I asked my mom, how come she never taught me to speak Assiniboine? She said, "Okay, Junior," she said, "the reason your Grandpa Dick King and me talk Assiniboine, we want you kids to go out because I didn't want you to go through what we went through during our school days. So that's how come I never learned Assiniboine." There was a lot of them that went to different branches of service. So that would probably be early 40s or so. Different branches on different areas. And what made me think is, if you stop and think, the guys called the Navajo code talkers. Back in the day, they don't, well, some of them I talked to, they wouldn't talk very much about what they did in World War II, see. The reason I was thinking about that is this Belknap. I said, a lot of them don't realize a lot of their people back during the war, when they went to World War II, they were code talkers, see. People don't realize that. Because like, there's a few, I know there's a few from Hays that they could speak Cree, Assiniboine, and Grovance, see. So, they would never say where they actually did that, or which country they were in, when they would translate for whatever service they were in. But like this one guy's name is Tuppy Gardapi. He was in a service, and he never did really, well, his siblings never did really ask him, or his kids ask him what he did, if he was in a service, or where he went, what he did, all this and that. But he never did really tell anybody, because my concept on that is because, like I said before, I was never taught Assiniboine language, because, like my mom said, I didn't want you to be treated the way you were. Anyway, veterans, they kept it to themselves, see. So like I said, there's topography, and there was a mount. I think it was, I can't remember which mount was him, and I think there was Richard Weasel, and there was that Allen, Bougie Allen from Lodgepole, Assiniboine, and George Chandler Sr., he was doing the Grove Mount. And there was a couple others. Well, I used to think about 9 of them, but I really didn't get the history from them. But the ones I did talk to, they were telling me what they did during their time in the service. And they come back, and later on in late 40s, 44, 45, when they did the Iwo Jima, and then back then they used all the Navajo speakers, see. That's where you got the code talkers from. But to me, in reality, the origin people don't realize was the Indians from this reservation more or less implemented and started it, see. So then I asked this one guy, his name was, they used to call Ed, I think, Beebles Nicholson's his nickname, but his dad, Ed Nicholson, he used to stay up in Pine Grove. Nobody never really asked or interviewed like you guys are doing, what they did, where they went, you know, all this and that. They all kind of, my concept, they kind of kept it amongst themselves. Like say if you use a Grovont and then you ran into same language, like say Grovant, so all the people that spoke Grovant that were actually in reality doing it, they more or less never talked about it, what they did. All I knew is they translated their language to, like say, other Grovants or Assiniboine to talk their in Assiniboine language to other Assiniboines, the Cree, same way. And then, like the reason I said, old Ed Nicholson, he said, well, he happened, you know, but people don't ask him anyway. He said, well, Max, he said, you know that Iwo Jima? I said, oh yeah, everybody knows that word. Ira Hays supposedly supposed to raise the flag. He said, yeah. He said, in reality, he said, oh, he said, him and somebody else were at that place where they did the first flag raising, see. He said, I was only 50 feet. And he said, he was round there when they were doing that. And then he said, yeah, I said, I even drank with Ira Hays. He said he used to be, well, must have been in camp or when they were in the States. He said, yeah, I used to sure like to drink, he said. But you know, stories like that, it's all lost more or less. To me, like people, how I look at it is I was on the ambulance crew for 16 years, see. And then we had 3 crews, and our response time was 5 minutes. We did a lot of training, like I did, I came into a lot of different types of accidents. And my wife, when I come home and asked me, what did you do? I said, oh, we just try to help somebody they got in a wreck or, you know, like that. My concept that relates to these veterans is they don't talk to other people outside of what happened to them, see. In other words, they just won't talk to me because they don't have the same feeling that they had when they were in whatever, like I said, ambulance or service, see. So that's how I look at this this Poppy Longknife's husband, he used to be one of them code talkers, see. So that was a little bit on that part, and I thought I'd kind of throw that in so you'd know a little bit. Like there's this one Carrywater, I think his name was Daily Carrywater. Anyway, that's the Carrywaters, like Toady Carrywater, and those Carrywaters, that was their brother that was in the service, right, during the war. Anyway, they caught, remember that one show, if you ever looked at it, like they'll show a picture of a mountain going straight up, and that's special forces, they called them the Devil's Brigade. Anyway, they had to go up there and so they could capture that unit that were on top, that were holding Americans down. Anyway, this one Daily Carryway, I think his name was. Anyway, back then they started a group of people. There was Canadians. I know there was some from Arizona, and then Montana. They like a lot of Indians because they were, you know, good outdoorsmen in other words. And then they had a big camp up in Helena. I forgot the name they call that now. I knew they started there. Did all their training there. They even did, you know, like they had some guys from Canada. They'd show them how to ski and stuff and all this and that. And, they did their training there. Then they formed a group, and they call them the Special Forces. That was their original name. Well, not their original name. Eventually they were called Special Forces, but the reason I'm talking about is that some people from here, their relatives went through all of that training in Helena. And then later on I found out that all the people that were in there, because I remember I went to a reunion once up in Helena because they were having a reunion for all those people that went to that Special Forces. Well, anyway, when I found out, they said that was the origin of the Green Beret. I said, oh, I didn't know that. A lot of people didn't know there was people from here that actually went to that training, see. So that's how the Green Beret originated from, with the people that went. And I met some people from down in Arizona. Their relatives or some were at that meeting they had with all the rest of that were still living. I went there, I think it was late 90s, and there were some from Canada. They were about 80, 90 years old. They were still visiting other people. Oh, 15, 16, Assiniboine. What is her mother's name? And it says Grass Lodge, and it said she was a Prairie Assiniboine. Then he's asked if he recognized her, and he says yeah. And he asked her where she died in Old Fort Belknap. They call it Old Belknap. It says, has the applicant always made her home on this reservation and at Old Fort Belknap? There used to be an Old Fort Belknap, in a Fort Belknap, and then there used to be what, 3 of them. A lot of people don't realize. That was a little bit of her. So like I said, on that paper you looked at, it kind of goes through, like I did this myself at the college. Like I got my name, my dad's name, my grandpa's name, and then my great-grandfather's name. I think I told you about my great-grandfather's name. I finally asked my dad where he was from, and he told me he was remember I told you his original name was White Buffalo. Back in the early days, they didn't want Indians to have their Indian name, so he took, remember I told you he took me to Oswego Cemetery. Right there, that's where you got your name, Junior. It had White Buffalo, Indian Scout, see, so that's how I got the name White. And like a lot of them, like, they got their names cut off. I never did really do anything on them. my grandpa Dick Richard King. All I know is I think they originated up north someplace where I never did know because I never did really go look for information, but I used to go to Chinook Library. If I was doing a family tree for somebody, I'd go up there and look at their old, see how far back I could go for marriage certificates and locate them. Back in the day, up here, you know where Hawkins stays? Up at the mission, no, you know, over there, right? East of there, about maybe 50 yards. I remember, I think I was about, I must have been about 9 or 10. Anyway, probably the 60s. Anyway, they had they call it a clown. They call it a clown ceremony. Anyway, it's kind of like when these guys will have their grobunk, and then they'll have their Assiniboine. You know, that's where they do their piercing. But these clowns are different. It's kind of a little different. In other words, the clown will, later on, if I'm a clown, will do everything opposite. You know, like they'll say, instead of saying yes, they'll say no, so you know what they mean. See? Anyway, I went there one time and they had these clowns were racing around there. As kids were playing around there, and it's chasing. They had you know, dressed up feathers and gunny sack over their face and chasing us out of the doorway. They had guts. They were chasing us with guts and hitting us. So that was the first part I ever did that. As for ceremonial, my dad, Max White Sr., who eventually they used to say he was a medicine man. Anyway, he went and fasted at, what's that butte in Blackfeet they call that? Chief Mountain. Anyway, people, you'll find people when you ask them about how they got into this, say for instance, say how they got into be a pipe carrier, how they got to be like let them do a medicine. People don't realize, myself, I used to kind of laugh at them simply because they weren't taught the way they're supposedly supposed to get it. A lot of them would say, oh, I fasted 4 days. The spirits came and said I could be a pipe carrier. See, which is not true. All them people that do that, say pipe carrier, a lot of them do a medicine, you know, help people with medicine. And then the reason I'm saying that is, I used to ask people, I said, well, show me how to smudge. They didn't know how to show me how to smudge the proper way because it depends on which tribe you're from. There's a lot of different ways how they smudge a sweetgrass seed. Well, anywho, my dad went to Chief Mountain, so when he came back, Joe Ironman and them tied him up to a tree, wrapped him up in a buffalo hide robe, tied him up with some rawhide. So he said, he was telling me this. I said, well, what happened? So he was telling me, he said, yeah, kid, he said, on the fourth day, he said, they unraveled me. I said, well, who unraveled you? He said, oh, there's a bunch of little people. He said, probably about 3 or 4 feet high, he was telling me. He said, they're small, had gray hair, braids, dressed in buckskin. He said, the only thing I noticed, he said, from the knees down, I couldn't see, there was no legs. He said, they were talking real fast the Assiniboine language to me. He said, so I had to explain to them, tell them to slow down because I couldn't get what they were telling me to do. He said, so they have to slow down because he wasn't used to hearing the Assiniboine talk real fast. So they did. So he said they told me to go back down to Three Buttes. He had that used to stay in the house there. Anyway, he asked me if I wanted to help him. I said, yeah. So we went down a river, you know, the river that way. I don't remember what they call it. Kips. Kips down that way. Anyway, we went along the trees and all those willows. You got enough willows to make a sweat lodge, but what we did is we cut each, we offered tobacco where that tree was, and we cut that tree and loaded it up, and then we took it to out there at its place, and then he said, now I gotta figure out where to put this sweat lodge. So from his house, we went south, and there's a little creek there. So he made a sweat lodge there, I helped him set it up, and on the other, he said, kid, I got to sing 4 songs. I said, all right. So I was listening to him sing, and he'd say, all right, kid, I need another rock. So I'd give him another rock and put it in my sweat lodge. Anyway, I was sitting there in front of that sweat lodge facing south, and then heard him singing on his 4 songs. So I peeked back, and his sweat lodge was really moving. So I snuck around the back and I lifted it up, and those sticks were just moving like that. Slammed it down, went sat in the front, waited for him to tell me that he was done. See. Anyway, he said, yeah, there's some guys coming from Canada. They want me to go to him ever so often. He said that there's a lot of elders up there, Assiniboine. He said they want to teach me which medicine they're going to show me and tell me where it's at and what it's used for. So that's how he became, they used to say, a medicine man. Anyway, then we'd go to Rocky Boy, go to a medicine lodge singing. And Kenny Gopher was his name. He went into an old log house. Me and my dad, Francis, his second wife, we was there. He said, okay, you guys, he said, we're going to start. See, everybody in there, they go in there. You always got to go to your left and go around, see. So all the women used to go in first and be on the right side, and the men like this, counterclockwise. Anyway, he said, the first song I'm going to sing, he said, I'm going to call the Thunderbirds. He said, don't be scared, he said. So he sang that song, and then you'd hear something hit like on that roof of that log house. And on the inside there was blue lights flashing all the way around, until he got done with that song. And he'd say, okay, next song, he said, I'm gonna call the Buffalo. So he sang that, and it sounded like something was snorting around in that house. He said, don't be scared. He said, this is the Buffalo Spirits coming in. Did that, and he said, now I'm gonna call the Thunderbirds, he said. So he did that. Then he called one more, I can't remember what he called. Well, anyway, he said, okay, we're almost done. He said, now when I turn on the lights, I think it was a Thunderbird one. He said, now don't be scared. Anyway, right by my ear, I heard a big old dog, you know, like bark at you. It just made me jump inside and sat up close and listening. So he said, I'm going to turn on this light. He said, one of you guys are going to have a eagle fan behind you, he said. Now if you find it, he said, just bring it. He said, pray for it, raise it to the directions that you know. and handed it back to me, and I was sitting next to my stepmom. She was elbowing me, said, Junior, Junior. So what? Really point, behind you. So I reached back and had that eagle feather, so I offered it. See, a lot of people don't realize you go up sky first, earth, north, then you go the 4 directions. I gave it back to him. That's my part on that. And then back in the day, well, you probably see a lot of people, they actually go, like say they went to a elder's wake or something, and I used to watch them and ask some of them, well, how do you smudge? So I said, no, you're doing it wrong. I said, how come? I said, I was watching you guys, how you do it. And then there's this one guy from Minnesota or something, he had his watch on and his glasses, but he left them on. When he started, after they started that, when he got done, they asked, how come you didn't take your watch, your ring, shoes off, and your glasses? He said, oh, our tribe over there, he said, we don't do that. So each tribe's got different traditions that they use. See? Oh, we said, oh, okay. So I'll ask you guys how, well, I always laugh at people. The reason I laugh is a lot of these schools, different offices, you'll always see a braid of sweetgrass either on their visor or on their window. I said, oh, they don't even know how to use it. Like you probably see mine, I got a small one on that table. See, that's when I use. And then, so would you guys know how to smudge? That's what I was going to ask you guys. Was you ever taught how? Go through the motions for me now, see if you're right. How you was taught, in other words. Okay, show me how was you taught? I didn't know which tribe you was on, but first thing I was taught is when you can first do it, you light it up, and then you lift your feet, see? Go in there first, under there, and go up to your legs, your face, your arms, and back, see? The reason, the religion, Indian religion culture I was taught is, they said the reason you do your feet, they said people don't realize that's how the spirits come into you, evil ones. They come up through your feet, they said. So when you smudge your feet, they can't come into you. So that was a concept I can tell you on that. And as for, like if you wanted to me, I could show you what I got in my box, what I got. I like this one. I got an obsidian arrowhead, and I got a little small rock I found. I asked this elder, Harris Rock, hey Harris, what, Max? I said, what is this? I found it by redwood, had 4 circles around it. Oh, Max, I said, back in the day, the real Indians used to pound their medicines. So, did you want me to show you that, what I have, or no? Well, anywho, they would tell them to come up ever so often, and they would actually tell him, little Rocky Mountains, where to go, find the plant, and what it was used for. Anyway, that before he died, he said, yeah, kid, I never did get to go back up there. But they showed him some plants and what to use them for. And then said he went up there one time and they showed him what it was used for and how to use it, pray and sing. And then he said that everybody sat cross-legged. Said he was sitting there cross-legged. He said, old fellas, he said, they don't eat fried foods, all boiled. He said, yeah, you know how you sit cross-legged? And he said, if you're young, you usually stand right up. He said, that's what they did. He said, here, I was the youngest one. I couldn't get up. Kitty said I have to go sideways and over and then get up. But he never did go back up her. But he said they would. They told him next time you come up her, Max. They said we'll show you where to go in the Little Rocky Mountains on North Fork. They said there's a plant up there that helps cancer. So he never did actually go back there. Anyway, when he started his doing his medicine thing, he'd even have a medicine lodge. People would go there. He had it kind of blocked off, and then sing and do whatever with his feathers to them, and like that. And then one day he said, "Hey kid," I said, "What?" He said, "You know what I have to do?" I said, "What'd you do?" He said, "I have to go to Oswego. I got a call from this woman down there. She said she wants me to come after a buffalo skull. So down below, their medicine men, back in the day, Cantrell, or I can't remember the other name. One of them used to use that skull in their medicine lodges." And he said, that woman said she's scared because that skull would snort at them at night. So he went after it, brought it back, and he started using it in his ceremonies he had. And eventually what he did is he, between the horns, he made like a lightning. One side is red, the other side is white. And then that's how he painted it. And then he used to keep it in his, he had like a little house for it right north of his house on the hill there, and had it facing the south. Anyway, through the years he used that. Well, before he passed, he said, "See that skull there?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "One of these days some people down below are going to come after it." He said, "When?" "I don't know." That's what he told me. I said, "Okay." Anyway, after he passed, I went down there to check on that skull. Anyway, that skull was gone. Oh, before that, I was at my house at Pine Grove. I kind of sound like Martin Luther King. I had a dream. Anyway, at the old house, I had to build supposed to build, like, say, if that was willows, I have to build willows and kind of like a oval nest in there, set that skull facing south. See? So I never did do that. And then dreamt that twice, so I was supposed to go down there and get that skull and keep it. So finally I went down there one day to check where it was, and it's gone. Somebody took it. So that was most of my culture part was that. And then when he did his Sundance down Three Buttes, sounded like Martin Luther King again. I dreamt that it had to be where he made his sweat when he fasted, but facing south. I said, "Yeah, right over there." I had a dream, you're supposed to have it over there on the right. And then my first dream, I said, "Yeah, I had a Martin Luther King dream again." I said, what they were doing is, I was on this hill, I was looking down. Three Buttes was in the background, I said, and then there's a bunch of sweat lodges in a circle. I said, I remember seeing about 10 or 15 those lodges, and I said, in my dream I was going into each sweat lodge and they were showing me what to do and all this and that, and what it was used for. I said, I remember going into each one, they were telling me. I said, but I went blank. I said, after my dream, I forgot what they told me. So I said, I never did do that after that. Anyway, later on through the years, about quite a few years ago, somebody from down below, their Oswego guys down that way, their medicine men, one of them guys, I don't remember who came after that skull. And so it's back down there with, we always call it down below people, see. And then that one day, this Joe Shields, see, they call him the clowns. They used to call them clowns. Remember I told you to do everything backwards, you know, instead of no, they'd say yes or yes, no, like that. You know, he asked me, he said, Max, I said, what? Do you know any songs? I said, oh yeah, I know. I said, yeah, I know. I said, I know 4 songs. And I said, they're clown songs. He said, can you tell me them? I said, and I said, well, I said, yeah, I will. But to me, I never would tell him, see, because they were given to my dad, and then my dad, being with him so long, I knew which song he was going to sing, see. Like he had a Thunderbird song, he had a Bigfoot song, and I can't remember the other 2. So anywho, through the years, I kind of forgot, but what I did is I wrote them down. Like I wrote the Bigfoot song down that he sang, the Thunderbird song. He was calling them, see. So, if I ever gonna tell anybody, I don't know. Because they would have to come to me. I would have to say, well, who told you and who sent you? You know? Like that, so. That's what I, like people, like I one year, like you're talking about culture, that one year I was the superintendent at Hays School. And not superintendent, but the chairman of the board at the Hays School. As a chairman, they voted me chairman. Anyway, that's when they first meet all the teachers, you know, they come. Well, first they all sit at the table, and they looked at me, and I knew what they were going to say, because I wasn't, to me, I wasn't brought up like any denomination and religion. So they looked at me and I said, well, you guys are asking me to pray. I said, I wasn't raised up like that. I said, to me, what I'm going to tell you is my concept. I said, a lot of you guys are Catholics, maybe Protestants, maybe Mormons, Presbyterians. I said, you're sitting here all denominations, and I wouldn't know how to pray because you're here. So what I'm going to say is I don't think it's right for me to say, okay, this is how we're going to pray because of this religion, or, you know, that religion. Might not be your religion how you pray. I said, so I'm just going to tell you, just pray in your mind how you was taught. So I sat down, so that's how come I never, like they always say, well, what religion are you? I said, well, my parents, my mom, when she was grown back in the day, they were taught Presbyterian or Protestant. I said, but I was never brought up that way. And I said, oh, okay, we understand. And I used to really catch the teachers, and the new teachers would come and, you know, meet the school board. And I always remember that this one teacher said, can I ask you a question? He said, go ahead, Max. I said, what kind of teaching did you go to school? You know, they said, oh, you know, they went to whatever subject to be a teacher. I said, let me ask you one question after that. I said, okay. I said, if you could tell me 2 questions, if you could answer them, then I'll believe you. I said, what's the analogical and pedagogical teaching you're going to teach these kids? I stumped them. They didn't know what I meant because I asked them those 2 words. Well, what does it mean? I said, well, I ain't going to tell you unless you want to go look it up in a dictionary. I never did tell them what they meant. to me, my concept, I never say I'm an elder because I'll say I'm a spring chicken. Anyway, my concept is what they really need. Well, back in the day, they used to have dialysis machines where they had to go clear to Great Falls just to do dialysis. Now they go clear to Havre. My concept used to be now is, say, each center, like Hays District, Gloucester District, Agency District, have their own dialysis places where they could teach the nurses that do their dialysis. Because my sister, Lorraine White, she was on dialysis for 16 years. My first wife, she was on dialysis for 12 years, I think. Well, eventually, my dad, he used to go clear to Great Falls to dialysis, and he died on his way up there. So I think they should have a dialysis local, in other words, in each community. And then with that thought in mind, you really stop and think that like they should have a place where they could, like me, I used to always try to give, donate blood, like Red Cross was the only place at agency, and I used to go get there, but the reason I'm saying that because I have rare blood, see. And then what the elders really need is, my thought is how I think it depends on the elder. One day I asked Mom, she was 90, I said, Mom, how do you feel since you're old now? She said, I don't know, she said. All I know, she said, I just live from day to day, and my concept of what I think the elders should need is have a program where some people could come in to the elders, like say if they can't walk or can't get out of bed or move, or go into their houses and help them with cleaning or whatever. As my one wife, Shirley White, she used to help the elders over at Tenplex. Happy Donny used to stay there, so she was his helper. In other words, she did all the cooking, washing, taking him down, shopping, anything that she would help him with. They used to have where Charity lives up at the Pine Grove, that corner house there. They had about 3 elders there. That used to be like, how would I say it? I want to say rest home, yeah, something like that. People would actually stay there, and that's the person that was there. They would take care of everything, like all their laundry, food, and money like that. But they need something where my thought is a lot of people looking through the years, I used to say, well, we was growing up different with this generation had grown up now. I said, I always tell people, I said, watch what you eat, don't eat spices. I said, I hardly ever fry food. I boil it. And then natural food, I said, I hardly ever eat pizza or anything like macaroni. I said, even soup, I said, if you notice when you eat them, a couple hours later you're hungry again. I said, something where they could have, I said, back in the day we used to have gardens, everybody used to can their food, all this and that. That's how my generation was growing up on. So as for what the elders really need, only thing I could say now, as I got older, is a real home. Say, okay, back in the day when they first started the res, they made them throw all their teepees away, and then they built, some of them built them log cabins, and then later on they told them, move from them and we'll build you a house and you can own it. Anyway, that's how all these housing projects supposedly supposed to been on reality. Eventually you get to own it and call it your own. The only thing you have to pay for now is your rent, electricity, propane, and wood. So that's the only thing I could think of is what the elders really need. Okay, when I was growing up, there was, where can I say it was at? No. Right south of here, back in the day, there was an old store. It was about maybe, about 40 yards long, 20 yards wide. They had a store there. Eventually there was a store there and another store on the right side, on the south side. And eventually kind of went out of business, in other words. And then the big store, they used to have a theater there. People used to be able to go watch, their shows that they came out with. And then downstairs, they had bingo for the people that used to like to play bingo. I remember going there a couple of times. Downstairs, a lot of men and women, elders, are sitting there playing bingo. Some kids used to race down and get cussed out. Some of them kids run by and touch their bingo cards, and they had beans to mark. Their beans would fly off so they didn't know which numbers they called. See? And upstairs, on some occasions, they would have like fiddle dances upstairs. They had fiddle dances up there, and they used to have like Christmas, all the holidays, they'd have them up at they call it the old show hall. They would have theirs there, and then right north across this road, they had a big old long white community hall, had steps, had a piano in there, and had like a basketball place in there. But there they used to have like a lot of Christmas ceremonies, dance ceremonies in there. And a lot of people came, and that's where they had their ceremonies in there. And then like I was saying, at this show hall across here on the right side, they used to have a motel there, about 6 rooms, and they call it the old pool hall. They used to have 2 gas pumps there in the pool hall. So that was there. And up farther where the post office is, they had they call it the Greasy Spoon. Used to be a cafe. Across used to be a little store called J. Parks. Used to sell, everything from guns, groceries, all this and that. And then sometimes they would, once in a while, they'd have fiddle and, ceremonies up at the rec center at Mission. Different, fiddle music. Not very much dance music. It was mostly fiddle music, Matisse music. Anyway, that the early 80s had 4 couples who got together. We put on bingo, so we was going to have a Christmas dance up at the Mission Rec Center. And what we planned for was to have one night fiddle, and the other night, like their Christmas dance. Anyway, this one elder died 2 days before we was gonna have that celebration up there, and we never did have it. We just canceled it. So that's two cultures. There's a lot of different cultures here. Fiddle dance and then Indian dance. There's different ceremonies and beliefs that they had. So what we did is we kept that money. I think we had about $2,000. So on that Memorial Day, coming Memorial Day, we had a big feed, and then we had all our food lined up in there. It was, anybody could go there because it was Memorial Day. That was one of the traditions that they used to have. Is the other like traditions people don't do anymore. Back in the day, like Pony Hill down Aaniiih and that little pink church. I don't know if they still do that here, but anyway, back then, if Memorial Day, if somebody died, because I had 4 siblings, they didn't know that were older than me, that passed away, and I was wondering why my mom would go down Pony Hill and she would set baby clothes on the grave, see, plus have something to eat every Memorial Day. I think they still kind of do that now, but not too much. So that's about mostly I can remember on that part. I think my stepdad, little George LaRock, the reason I'm saying that is my mom, she was married to Moses Stiffarm Sr., and he got killed. And my sibling was Gerald Jeb Stiffarm Sr., Loretta Cookie Stiffarm, and Alice Marie Hochalter. She's still living. And then I didn't know I had 4 siblings before me. Then I was born, and Billy Whiskers and Sister Bean, 7th, and on my mom's 3rd marriage was little George LaRock. He was bilingual, I finally found out, because all the Indians would come to Kern's store, see. They would talk Cree, Robont, Assiniboine, and a little bit of French. Well, it made sense later on because they would come to the store a lot of times and he would interpret for other people. He'd ask them in their language what they'd wanted, so he'd go get it for them, see. Anyway, the reason I mentioned him is when my mom later divorced my dad, she came and met little George LaRock at the store, so they got married. So that's where my sister Georgianne, used to be Georgianne Doney, Curtis Doney's wife. She passed away about 4 or 4 years ago. And then Alain LaRock is still alive. I was their dad. Anyway, I was more or less, because I was, the 4th one oldest, I was raised in all his traits. Reason I'm saying traits is because back then each generation is taught different traits, how they were growing up, what they're supposed to do, like that. So I learned his traits, and then reason I'm saying traits is he taught me how to hunt, skin, trap, and how to fish, see. So he taught me those, and then that one night I was sitting at, I want to talk about this one because that one night, little George LaRock, on his culture, he was an orphan and he was raised by his grandma. Anyway, I went to see him when he passed away. He was in coma. Anyway, I'll go back first. Anyway, I was sitting down the river, I'd sit there and check our land. He'd tell me about a long time ago how he raised, or what he did, and what his family did, and his siblings. He said, yeah, kid, he said, I said, well, what did you guys believe in? He said, oh, he said, our religion says when you pass, you cross the river, he said. You gotta go across the river. And then he had named some of his siblings and friends that he knew. So that was his concept. So that day he died, they called me up first. I went and seen him at the rest home, and he was in a coma. And then my mom and his siblings, my brothers and sisters, Aaniiih and Georgiana Rock, they were sitting there next to his bed. So I got there and I held his hand, and I said, "Little George," I said, "if you hear me, squeeze my hand once." So he did. I said, "Okay, little George, I'm here." And he squeezed my hand, and I said, "Squeeze it if you hear me," or and squeeze my hand, say yes. So I was talking to him. I said, "Did you wait for me?" He squeezed my hand, and I said, "Okay, I'm here." I said, "Little George, you could cross the river," because I remembered that when I told him, so he squeezed my hand. I said, "Okay, little George, you could go across the river and go to your friends." I named all his friends he was talking about. I said, "You could go visit them and drink coffee with them," he said, because they always had a coffee can on a fire when they crossed, he said. I said, "Okay, so when I die," I said, "I want to go across and keep that coffee pot warm when I get there." So he squeezed my hand, meaning yes. So I said, "Okay, little George, you could go now." So he squeezed my hand, and about 5 minutes later, his breath got slower and slower and slower, and he finally passed. See? So that was that part on that. I think I did the same thing to my mom. Like my concept is people always don't realize some of the, like my mom did the same time. She said she was waiting for me, so I told her to go ahead. And whereas, like my sisters and brothers were there, they wasn't talking to her. They was sitting way away from her. None of them was up close holding her hand, talking to her. So. Okay, well, that's going to be a long, the future generation. If you know your history, if you ever go to college and look up the origin of quantum blood, see, everybody has that. I think there's one tribe doesn't have quantum blood to be a member of their tribe, right? You see a lot of different tribes, so they all have quarter, eighth, and then plus some other tribe, say, okay, I'm 1/8 of this tribe, this and all that. But the reason that was set up, if you look through your history, it's Alex Cohen. He was the one that implemented that blood degree for all Indians. There's one tribe that says you don't have to be blood quotum to be a member of a tribe, see. Long as you could prove lineal descendancy, not blood quotum. So I wish they'd do that. And then, like for the language, like I stated earlier in that one, I was telling you about Assiniboine language, and how my grandpa, grandparents, and my mom, they wouldn't teach their siblings, in other words, the language, simply because I asked my mom once, because my mom and my grandpa, Richard Dick King, would come and visit on Sunday. They would sit there and talk Assiniboine language all day. So, okay, kids, go out, your Grandpa Dick's coming. They'd give us candy and be outside. Oh, they'd visit 2 hours talking to Assiniboine. But she said, I didn't want you kids to learn it the way we were treated back. So that was my concept when I first heard about Assiniboine language. That was their concept. So the future generation, like you said, it depends on, I'll give you a good example. If you look at the language now, they'll say Nakoda language, but that's wrong. People don't, I try to explain to people, I said each district, there's Lodgepole district, Hays district, Aaniiih district. I said there was all these districts, say each district had a Assiniboine or Grovant or whatever tribe language in their district. That's what they talk. Said how I know this, because I went down below and seen my grandma on my dad's side, and my grandma told my mom in Assiniboine to pass the sugar. Anyway, my mom got up, went outside, they lived next to the railroad tracks. So she went outside and looked, I guess, and then went back in the house, and my grandma asked my mom in Assiniboine what she was doing. She said, oh, you told me to go look for the train. She said, no, I told you in Assiniboine, our Assiniboine language in there, to pass the sugar. So that's why I said Nakoda is wrong. So what they did on the Nakoda language on this reservation is they got five of their peers together. Can't remember all their name. There was Selena Dittmar, I think, what's the name from Minerva Allen, and Richard Weasel, Harris Rock, and there was another guy from Lodgepole. He was a guy, he taught the Assiniboine language. And then what they did, they got together. People don't realize on their language, like I said before, each people has their own dialect, in other words. So what they did is they got these Grovant and the Assiniboine people together saying, okay, we can call this, like I said, Nakoda language. And you think of one word, and from now on, this word would be used, like I said, my grandma said to pass the sugar, and then my mom went looking for a train, see. So I said, from now on, this word will mean what we will all say that means, rather than each individual district have a different meaning, rather than a meaning that you asked me. Same way with Grovant. I remember I took Assiniboine language because I had to take some kind of language. Anyway, I took Assiniboine language. And then Selena Dittmar, this other guy from Lodgepole, he's supposedly supposed to teach the Assiniboine men how to speak, see. And Selena Dittmar was doing a women's version. And then anyway, I went there for 2 weeks. Then I went down to visit my dad because he knew Assiniboine. And my stepmom, Frances White, knew Assiniboine. He said, Junior, I said, what? He said, how are you doing in the Assiniboine class? So I started speaking Assiniboine language, and she said, Hokwa. I said, what do you mean? She said, Junior. I said, what? She went like this. I knew what she meant. That I was learning the woman's version, see. Oh, she just laughed. So I dropped that class because you can only take it for about 2 or 3 weeks and have to drop class. And so I had to take Grobon to some Elmer, Maine at the Hays School. So I went to his Grobon language, how to speak Grobon to there, see. So that's all the different situations, scenarios that I ran into is my one concept is I was thinking one day, oh, if you look at all these reservations, to me they put all the enemies together, Grobon and Assiniboine. They was hoping they would kill each other, see, but really did they realize they, you know, intermarried each other. So for the future, oh, there was this one woman, she passed away, her name was Aaniiih. She actually had a machine, looked like, well, you see those old Polaroid cameras, they got, I could take a picture and it slides. Anyway, she had a little machine. She'd go see my mom and ask my mom how to say different words in Assiniboine language, see. So that's what my mom would do for her. And one day I asked Cami, I said, hey Cami, you still got all those documentations you had Mom tell you how to say it in her language? She said, yeah, Junior, I do. I said, oh, that'd be good information if they could have that in the schools. I think there's some Grobot ones too. They actually did that in Grobot language, and you know, like this and that. And then, anyway, I kind of remind me of like Bunny Pete used to always trying to speak Assiniboine. I said, no, Bunny, that ain't the way you say it. Yes, Junior, that's how. I said, no, it ain't. Well, what am I trying to say? She said, I said, when you say, a woman says she wants to go to the bathroom, I said, you're saying it different. I said, I'll give you a good example. I said, my mom was telling this to me, and this is going to make you laugh. Anyway, everybody knows Tuppy, what's his name? Tuppy Halgeson, because he supposed to speak Assiniboine. See, he was taught by his grandma, which was a Halgeson. That's how he learned his Assiniboine. See. Anyway, Tuppy Halgeson used to teach at Head Start, trying to teach all those kids how to, remember this was a Christmas song. Anyway, his teaching those Head Start kids how to, I can't remember what song my mom said. Anyway, I don't know if it was Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer or Dashing Through the Snow, or can't remember which one she said. Anyway, Tuppy Halgeson took his kids up to my mom's house and he sang 2 or 3 songs, and Mom was just smiling, told him thanks, and they left. And the next day I said, Mom, I said, I thought I heard some singing up here, Christmas carols. She said, yeah. And she started laughing at me. I said, what? I said, you know what Tuppy was doing? I said, no. He taught these kids these Christmas carols, and then the language he learned from Halgesons, like I said, different districts had different meanings, right? So he was taught their language. So he come here, and I'm from this district, and my Assiniboine's language different. Remember, I got back to the other place where all districts are different, meaning for saying different objects would be different, but sound the same. Anyway, I said, well, what did he do? He said, oh, he said he sang 2 songs, and she said I started laughing, and Tuppy Halgeson said, Serena, I said, what you laughing at? It's tough. He said, what? You know what you're singing to me? He said, no, what was it? I said, I thought I was singing a Christmas song. He said, no, Tuppy, is in the Assiniboine language, he was telling me to take my clothes off. It was like that. I knew that's the part I could say about, culture or what they think they need to do. Yeah, I think they do. Like all that stuff is lost, and I like it for the Crees of Rocky Boy and some of the reindeer. They start young. Now when you're asked Richard Weasel, I said, Richard, I said, how can I said, how was you taught to speak Assiniboine? See, they call me Junior too. He said, well, Junior, he said, how I was taught when I was young, my parents would point at something and tell me in Assiniboine, so I'd know what they wanted, or they'd point, say clock or whatever. Even one of those old washing things, see, that's back in the day when that, tubs, bucket, water, salt, sugar. He said if I could say all those in the house, like picture, window, stove, they had kerosene lamps. He said, if I could name all them, he said, then they took me outside and then showed me, like, say, trees, grass, sky, moon, stars, sun. He said, that's how I learned to talk Assiniboine language. So with that thought in mind, you gotta stop and think, well, my concept was, oh, that makes sense. Because there's this old lady, they call that Kills at Night Center. Teresa, she used to be Teresa Lamble, live up by the mission. Anyway, that one day I worked for maintenance, so I had to go look at her propane stove for her, so I was in there checking it. And pretty soon she started talking Grove on. So I looked at her and smiled because I knew what she was saying. And I said, no, I mean that dog. She said, anyway, that dog knew Grovant. So that's my concept, I think, on the, like as for the distance, say, generations, my concept on for them is get an education. That's your best teacher. Do everything, and like I said, like a lot of these people run for the conference, oh, help the elders or help the kids, the future generations. If you stop and think, when I had some of my grandkids that were special ed, they couldn't comprehend, or they would look at you like, what you talking about? What do you want? So I'd teach them and tell them how to do it. But this one of my grandkids on special ed, I used to pity them because my one granddaughter couldn't comprehend, or dyslexia they call them, couldn't remember, or different numbers. Anyway, I sent her away. They did a genetics test. She was missing 2 chromosomes. So she couldn't really do that, but eventually she got to graduate from Hays Lodge full, and then about 4 years ago, she said, Grandpa, I said, what? I really want to get my driver's license, but I'll just go to the library. I said, you could get on there and do all those tests. Just go through all those different tests they'll make you go through. I said, just go through it so you can memorize them and see it, and then you'll know. So she went and took, after about 6 months of those tests, she said, Grandpa, I said, what? She called me up, guess what? I said, no, I don't know. I said, what do you want me to guess? She just laughed. And, oh, Grandpa, I'm glad I passed my driver's test. She said, I was just scared, but I did what you told me over and over, and I remembered each question. He said I got to the 21st question, and that instructor tapped me on the shoulder and said, Laurie, you passed. So that's how I got my driver's license.